Hi guys, welcome to another statistics video with me, David. In this video, we're going to learn about autoregressive models and how they are used in distribution modeling. Specifically, we're going to focus on the NADE and MADE architectures. Let's dive into it. So, modeling multivariate distributions is hard. Even if our data is a simple binary vector, we still have 2 to the power of d different possible states, and this explodes quickly as d grows. So one way to overcome this difficulty is to break down the problem to chunks we can handle. Let's use the chain rule of probability and factor the joint distribution into a product of conditionals and then handle each conditional separately. Here I give a 4D example. There can also be different orderings to the data. On the surface, this only seems to make sense if there's some natural ordering to the data. We would not expect it to work, for example, on a binary image, where there's no obvious ordering. But this turns out to work surprisingly well also on images, regardless of the ordering chosen. For example, if I take this MNIST digit image and start from the top left pixel and go row by row, then the previous pixels already give us some information about later pixels. Even with factorization, if we allow for all possible distributions, we have to represent them using tables like this. And these tables also grow exponentially in size. And so the problem remains intractable. What we can do instead is to constrain them using a model. And one of the most obvious models to use is a logistic model that applies a sigmoid over a linear function of the previous units. And so our journey begins with this logistic autoregressive model, or network. It was presented by Brendan Frey in 1998. It is sometimes referred to as LARC, Logistic Autoregressive Classifiers, as it was originally introduced for classification problems. And it's also known as fully visible sigmoid belief networks. The model is as follows. We use the conditional factorization and model each individual conditional with a sigmoid over the linear combination of all previous units. This is the corresponding graphical model, where I have omitted the bias terms as I will do in the subsequent graphs as well. We can find the weights using maximum likelihood. We'll denote by L of ij the log likelihood of the jth conditional of the ith observation. The full log likelihood for the ith observation is the sum over all conditionals, and the full log likelihood of the entire data is the sum over all observations. We'll denote by eta ij the linear part of the ith observation jth unit. L of ij is given by this expression. We can calculate the gradient with respect to a single weight using the chain rule for derivatives. The first term can be found rather easily to be equal to this, and the second term is equal to this. The full derivative is equal to the product of these terms, and since we have different weights and biases for each conditional, this is also the derivative of the whole ith log likelihood. To obtain the full gradient, we sum over the entire dataset. Similarly, we can calculate the bias derivatives. Using the gradients, we can do gradient descent and maximize the log likelihood, or we can use other algorithms. The major benefit of this model is its simplicity. The drawback is that it's too simple, as without hidden units, it cannot capture more compound structures. So, a paper by Joshua and Sami Bengio added a hidden layer between input and output. Each hidden unit is equal to a nonlinear activation of a linear combination of the previous units. The conditional probabilities are equal to a sigmoid over a linear combination of the previous and current hidden units. Notice that the hidden units cannot use current input, but the conditional can. That is, H2 cannot use X2, but P of X2 can use H2, because it only relies on previous inputs. I could have also written H1 here, but it would only be equal to f of B1, that is a nonlinear function of a bias term, so I omitted it. An important thing here is that each hidden unit can actually be a group of hidden units, and we shall see this shortly. But in any case, this model still has relatively simple gradients, and so we can do maximum likelihood or minimize the negative log likelihood. In the upper part, we can see the gradients for the upper layer, and this is exactly like the previous LARC gradients, only with h instead of hex over here. In the lower part, we have to propagate the gradient using the chain rule. I'll use zeta to denote the linear part of the input to the hidden layer. Notice HK contributes not only to the cave prediction, but to all subsequent predictions. So the chain rule gives this sum. Here's a graphical explanation. Suppose we want to find the gradient of this weight, W21. It's equal to this sum. This path corresponds to this conditional, this to this conditional, and this to this conditional. I hope this makes it clear why we had to include the sum. The gradient itself is fairly straightforward. The sum is over all j from k to d. Computing the derivative of each term is simple. We already derived the first two terms. The derivative of f depends on the choice of activation function. It has one form for the sigmoid and another for, let's say, tan h. But in either case, it is easy to compute. The most right derivative is simply equal to xil. We can take out of the sum terms that don't depend on j, and we get this. The derivative of the bias is almost identical, only without the x's. As I mentioned, each hidden unit can also represent a group of hidden units, and each group can be of different size. Let's call it hk. To account for this, we simply need to introduce another index to the equations, which I've denoted here by using r. So HIKR means the ith observation, the kth conditional, and the rth hidden unit in that group of hidden units. The only complication is that we have more weights now, but other than that, everything remains the same. The gradients are of the same structure as before. The main problem with this approach is that it's a bit costly with regards to parameters and computations. If every hidden group has the same size, then hk equals h, and we have h weights for the input to the first hidden group, 2h for the second, etc. The same scaling occurs in the hidden to output layer. Summing everything up, both the number of parameters and computational cost grow on the order of big O of d squared times h. And so the next advancement tried to reduce the number of weights and computations. This is what NADE, or Neural Autoregressive Distribution Estimation, does. The first paper was published in 2011 by Larochelle and Murray. Using weight sharing, they reduced the number of weights to big O of dh. They placed two major constraints. The hidden to output layer connections only go from a single group to the corresponding conditional, so single arrows in this layer. And in the input to hidden layer, we share the weights. So the weight of x1 is the same for all hidden units, and the same goes for x2 and all other x's. Let's see the forward pass. The input to hidden layer linear term, zeta, starts with the bias vector. Then we compute the first hidden unit with the element-wise sigmoid operation. We then compute the conditional. We update zeta by adding the first weight vector, and we continue in this way, each time adding more weights to the first linear term. The backward pass does the same, but in reverse. We need to accumulate the gradients for the bias and the zeta terms, which correspond to the weights, because they affect all future hidden units. The paper made one more theoretical contribution, which I'll go over briefly. You can pause the video to have a better look. The motivation actually came from RBMs and wanting to improve on them. In the RBM video, I mentioned that RBMs suffer from several limitations. You can only sample using this method, you don't get an explicit analytical distribution. There is no tractable likelihood, only a pseudo-likelihood, and the gradients are noisy, making the model hard to train. So what the NADE authors did was to use the energy function form of the Boltzmann distribution and factor it out using conditionals. The problem is that it's still quite intractable. The sums that appear are computationally intractable. So they used mean field approximation to approximate these conditionals. They look at these quantities over here, that is, given all the previous units, what's the probability of the hidden units and all future and current units? And they approximate it with independent distributions, one for each visible and hidden unit. Since everything is independent, these problematic sums simply disappear. We can switch between the sums and the product, and then the sums are equal to 1. And so each conditional is approximated by the means of this approximated distribution. To find this approximated distribution, we optimize its parameters to minimize the KL divergence between the two distributions. I won't go over the entire derivation, but you can pause the screen and have a better look if it interests you. The main trick to notice here is that if we multiply the terms by the Q distribution and sum over all possible values in that distribution, we get the expectation of X or H under that distribution. Also, because the distribution is the independent mean field, we get that the expectation of X times H is equal to the expectation of X times the expectation of H. If we differentiate the KL with respect to the parameters of the approximated distribution and equate to 0, we get that they must equal to this. Notice how closely this resembles the NADE architecture from before. We set the hidden units to be equal to this, and the conditional probabilities to be equal to this. Note that for k less than j, mu k of j is equal to x of k. NADE also sets all the means for k greater or equal to j to be equal to 0, and also uses a different weight matrix V for the hidden to output layer. So the bottom line is that NADE can be thought of as modeling the data using a Boltzmann distribution, factoring it using the chain rule, and approximating the conditionals using mean field, that is, independent Bernoulli variables. The optimal parameters of these approximated distributions correspond almost exactly to the NADE architecture. There was also a follow-up paper by some of the same authors that extended NADE to real-value data. Instead of modeling each conditional with a Bernoulli distribution, it uses a mixture of Gaussians. Consequently, the output layer predicts the mixture weights as well as the mean and variance of each Gaussian component. They also introduced deep NADEs that have multiple hidden layers, and also orderless NADE, which trains on randomly sampled variable orderings rather than on a single fixed ordering. The next important improvement is MADE, or Masked Autoencoder for Distribution Estimation. It was introduced by Germain, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, and several of the authors behind NADE, but takes a rather different starting point, autoencoders. So the problem with NADE is that, as we saw, it's sequential, meaning it's not parallelizable, and so training is slow. Autoencoders, on the other hand, are fast, but are not guaranteed to output valid distributions. So the MADE solution is to use masking in order to force the distribution to be a valid one. That is, a factorization of conditionals. And so now, all conditionals can be obtained using a single forward pass, and all gradients with a single backward pass. We want to design the masking such that each output can only depend on previous inputs, and this is only achievable if the product of the two masking matrices produces a strictly lower triangular matrix. The smart way this is done in the paper is that each hidden unit is given an order between 1 and d-1. The first layer matrix weights are equal to 1 if the order of the hidden unit is greater or equal to the order of the input unit. The second layer matrix weights are equal to 1 if the hidden unit order is strictly less than the output order. So there is a trade-off here. If we give the hidden unit a high order, it can use more inputs, but it can be used by fewer outputs. And vice versa. If we give it a low order, it can be used by more output units, but it can use fewer inputs. Let's see a small example. Suppose we have 4 hidden units, and we give them all an order of 1. Then all the hidden units can only use the first input unit, while the output units can use all hidden units. Since the hidden units only depend on the first input, we are essentially not using any of the other inputs, and so we are wasting information. Here's the other extreme. If we give all the hidden units the maximal order of d-1, which is 3 in this case, then the hidden units can use the first 3 inputs, but only the last output unit can use the hidden units. The rest can only use the bias terms. Again, this is not a smart way to use the information. Here's a much more efficient and useful order that has a better trade-off. Pause the video and check if you can understand why the connections are as described in the graph and equations. If we look at the matrices, we can see that indeed the matrix multiplication results in a strictly lower triangular matrix, and so the output will be indeed a valid distribution. Since each element in this multiplied matrix is equal to the dot product of this row with this column, and each element is equal to this, if the column is larger or equal than the row, this must be equal to 0. And so we have proved that the matrix is strictly lower triangular for all orderings that have this smart structure. We can write the forward pass like this, and then the gradients of the log likelihood are quite simple to derive. There is also an extension to DeepMade with L hidden layers. We assign an order to every hidden unit in every layer, and the same masking rules from the single hidden layer case naturally generalize. For every pair of consecutive hidden layers, the order of a unit in the next layer must be greater than or equal to the order of the unit in the previous layer. In the final layer, however, the order must be strictly less than the order of the output unit. To avoid disconnected units, the orders assigned to each layer must be greater than or equal to the minimum order in the previous layer. How to choose the orders? Well, we usually sample them uniformly. During training, we can sample the ordering of the variables, which can be referred to as M0, which is also the ordering of the output units. By sampling a different ordering at each iteration, we train the network to be order agnostic. In addition, we can sample different orderings for the hidden units themselves, making the network connectivity agnostic as well. Here's a graph from the paper with 3 hidden layers explaining the structure. On the left is a fully connected autoencoder. The middle part shows the masks. The black squares are the ones zeroed out. On the right is the MADE structure. The decomposition order is 3, 1, 2. Since d is equal to 3, the hidden unit's order can be 1 or 2. They are sampled uniformly. Pause the video and see if you can understand how the orders correspond to the mask matrices. Note that this kind of resembles the Bengio and Bengio architecture, only with single hidden units that don't have to match the number of inputs or outputs. Also note that in order to generate new data, the forward pass still needs to be sequential. Parallelization is only utilized during training. Okay, so let's wrap up. We covered 4 main algorithms in this video. We started with LARC, also known as the fully visible sigmoid belief network, and then added a hidden layer in the Bengio and Bengio model. Next, in NADE, we gave up on some parallelization in exchange for greater computational efficiency. By sharing the input to hidden weights across conditionals and updating the hidden activations recursively, NADE reduced the computational cost substantially. We also briefly discussed extensions such as deep NADE and real-valued NADE. Finally, we introduced a different, but rather similar, approach called MADE, which uses masking to compute all conditionals in parallel and can therefore be much faster during training and likelihood evaluations. There are 2 more important models I want to mention. Both were introduced around the same time by Aaron Vandenhurd and his collaborators at Google DeepMind. The first is PixelCNN, which extends the Auto-Regressive approach to convolutional neural networks, using masked convolutions. Convolutions are more efficient than dense connections because they use small local kernels and exploit the assumption that nearby inputs are generally more informative than distant ones. In autoregressive density estimation, this means that instead of conditioning each variable directly on all previous variables, the model conditions on the previous variables that fall within its receptive field. In the first layer, the masked convolution predicts each pixel using only the pixels that come before it in the chosen ordering, typically the pixels above it and those to its left. In later layers, similar to what we saw in Bengio and Bengio and in NADE, the convolution can also use the hidden representation at the current spatial location, because that representation itself depends only on previous pixels. There are many additional implementation details, but I will not go into them here. The second model is WaveNet, which applies a similar idea to one-dimensional audio signals. It uses causal convolutions to model the distribution of the next audio sample given the previous samples. Again, the architecture includes several additional features, but the central idea is that when we make a prediction for the next step, the model can only use past information and not future information. Well, that's all for this video. See you in the next one.